Host disabled sharing screen. Host disabled sharing screen. This is what it says to me. तुमको भेजना पड़ेगा क्या? PPT?
Yes, ma'am.
Hello. अब आवाज आ रही है?
Hello, working.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you very much. अब ठीक है? देखो. Okay. A very good afternoon to all of you. And we are starting with the next. We are starting the next session with the talk, which is on energy from industrial revolution to digital revolution. Today, we decided to just set the pace to make everybody understand, because we have participants. It's a mixed bag. Some of you are professional in the area of energy. Some of you are just started your work in the area of energy. So keeping everybody's interest in mind, we have designed this this entire training program. And today we thought we will go a little mild, so that everybody understand why is it that whenever we talk of climate change, which is the contemporary topic, everybody is talking about climate change, because we just culminated the COP26 last week. So so what's the role of energy? Because whenever we talk about climate change, it invariably starts with energy and it ends at energy. So what is it? I mean, why is it that we are talking about energy so very much? And in the morning, we heard it that what is the role of energy, even in the form of when life is conceptualized, right? I mean, from the very beginning of the life till date, it is the energy which matters. And if we look at, and the historic perspective of it was shared with you in the morning, but this time we are going to talk more about the recent development of energy. And you would hear that whenever we talk about climate change and the CO2 concentration or the GHG concentration in the atmosphere, we say that we have come to a certain limit from the pre-industrial era. So what is this pre-industrial era, or what is industrial era? Where are we today? How far, how much back in past it has happened, right? So all those things are important. So let's peg it at the very definition of energy. And as you can see here, this man here, the photograph here, as you can see, is Thomas Young, and probably the first one who used the term energy in the modern form, the way we know it today, right? That it is the energy which drives thing, and the unit for it is joules, so on and so forth. It actually came from 1807. So the onset of 18th century, energy was defined the way we see or we understand energy today. So from how it is transferred from one body to the other, it is a conserved quantity. This is equally important, that energy is conserved. The net amount of energy present in any fuel is constant. And the law of conservation of energy states that you can only convert its form from one form to other, and you cannot create or destroy it. Now, what does it mean? It means that if you are starting with certain amount of energy, if you are starting with 1 kg of coal, let's say, and the 1 kg of coal has, for example, let's say 28 megajoules of energy, then when you convert it, the maximum that you can get is 28 megajoules. You cannot have 30. You cannot have, even for that matter, 28.1. So that's the input value. That is how much energy is present in your fuel. From there you start. And then there is another law of thermodynamics which says that every time when the energy changes its form, a part of that is wasted. That means if you start with 1 kg of coal and that coal has 28 megajoules of energy into it, for example, I'm talking about low grade coal, then when you burn it, then what happens? The chemical energy is now converted into the heat energy. It's converted into the heat energy. And when you burn coal, you also get some amount of light. So it is converted into light energy, right? And a part of that is wasted. So when you try to capture that energy, when you try to capture that heat, even if you sum it up, 28 megajoules is converted into X amount of heat, Y amount of light, and Z amount of wastage. Now, X plus Y plus Z would be equal to 28, right? Of these, if Y is the amount of heat, let's say that is 20 megajoules. And if you want to capture this entire 28 megajoules to convert it into steam, because now you are running a power cycle, we all understand that how we derive electricity from coal, then you cannot transfer the whole of 20 megajoules to steam. A part of that would be wasted. So please remember this. This is a very fundamental about energy, that it can only change its form. And when it changes its form, a part of that would be lost. Okay. Right. So that is all about energy. And as you can see from there, the term energy was formed by Thomas Young, then Gustav Gaspard used the word kinetic energy. Rankine cycle came in, he coined the term as potential energy, which is very much there by virtue of its position. And the law of conservation of energy, I mean, even if it was used in the 18th century, at the very onset of 18th century, the conservation part of it came a little later, right? And then in 1845, James Prescott Joule discovered the link between mechanical power and the generation of heat, the relationship between it. When you have to work, that means energy you put in to generate heat. So this is the very basic fundamental about energy. Now, other terminology that we often, and everybody who will be coming in for the talks from now on would be using all these terms. So my idea today was to introduce you to this term, primary energy and secondary energy. What do we understand by the primary energy and secondary energy? Many of you probably know, but for those who don't know, primary energy consists of unconverted or original fuel. So coal, for example, is primary energy. Secondary energy includes resources that has been converted or stored. So what is it? Then it is electricity. I just gave you an example. Coal is primary energy because it has not yet been subjected to any technological treatment. It is still in its very raw form. When you subject it to a technological treatment like the steam cycle, it is converted into electricity. So you start from coal, which is primary energy, and you convert it into secondary form of energy when you subject it to the steam cycle or any other processing route. So that coal becomes secondary energy in the form of electricity. So that is the difference between primary energy and secondary energy, and I'll tell you why it is so important. So other sources of primary energy is like petroleum, coal, oil, biomass, flowing water, wind, and solar radiation, right? And those are the fuels that can be mined, reaped, extracted, or harvested directly. And secondary energy cannot be harnessed directly from nature. It is derived from primary source of energy, for example, electricity I just gave you. So it is derived. Okay, it is derived. Please remember that. Now look at this example. Here, as you can see here, it's primary energy. It is subject to a transformation, and then we get secondary energy out of it. Now, what does subject to transformation basically means? It means that it has been subjected to some technological treatment. Morning, we were talking about finances, that if you want to limit the warming within 1.5 degree or 2 degrees Celsius, you need access to certain kind of technologies. Who will fund this technology? Where from the finance come from? Okay, and this is the secondary energy because the emission we report is in terms of secondary energy. I'll explain it to you in a moment, right? That's why it is important to know that why is it that we're talking about primary energy, or is it wise to talk in terms of secondary energy? So primary energy, as you can see here, oil, natural gas, coal, uranium, these are all primary source of energy. Gasoline, it comes from after being processed in a refinery. There's a big chemical plant that we put across. So gasoline becomes a secondary energy. However, natural gas or crude is the primary source of energy, right? So that's the difference between primary energy and secondary energy. Now, why I talked about it is because let's say we are talking about coal, an inferior quality coal, and we say that it has 1800 megajoules of energy in it, right? So it is 18 megajoules per kg. So if we're taking 1 ton of coal, so we're talking about 18,000 megajoules of energy in it. Now, the same coal, when it is subjected to a treatment of power in a power plant, it has been transported, same coal, it's the same coal. Technically, let's assume it's the same coal. And from the same mine, it has an energy of about 18 megajoules in 1 kg of this coal. The same coal is given to an Indian power plant, it has given to an American power plant, to a Chinese power plant, and let's say to a German power plant. In principle, it would have ended up producing the same amount of electricity, right? But because we have access to different forms of technology, right? They may have, they are developed economies, they may have developed some technology which is very efficient, and the same amount of coal will give a different amount of electricity, as you can see in here, because their power plants are running at different efficiencies, right? So same, as you can see here, 1 ton of coal will give 6,300 megajoules of electricity, 7,200 megajoules of electricity here. That you have to look at the units if you talk in terms of units. 660 megajoules in China and 8,100 megajoules in Germany. And that means if we start talking about secondary energy, that means we are talking about access to those advanced technologies as well, right? So the same amount of coal will give different amount of electricity based on where or what kind of technology it is being subjected to. This is important, right? And therefore, and if we convert it, if we say that 3.6 megajoule is equal to 1 kilowatt hour or 1 unit of electricity, then you can see how we are getting different unit of electricity. So 1 ton of coal will give 1,700 units in India, 2,000 units. These are typical numbers, typical power plant efficiencies of these plant will give 1,700 in India, 2,000 in US, 1,850 units in China, and 2,250 units in Germany. These are the typical power plant efficiencies of these country. Okay. Therefore, it is important that we talk in terms of primary energy need of a country, because this is independent of the technology that is available to that country, right? Because if we start talking about in terms of secondary energy, then we end up losing certain things, the financial part of it, right? And the speakers who have been lined up, they will come and talk about all these things in detail. Therefore, you will see that every time when you hear a climate debate, people are talking in terms of the primary energy need of the country. What is the primary energy need? That means total energy in terms of the field without being subjected to the technological access that they have. So as you can see here, this was all about the technical access, the availability of the knowledge which is there. And that's why in the morning when we said that, all the pollution that you see that is happening, the climate change that has happened, it is the developed nations who have, because of their development, such emissions have happened. So now when we are talking about mitigating it or controlling it, the onus should be more on them rather than on the developing or underdeveloped economies, those who have yet not emitted that much, right? So therefore, they should make these advanced technologies available to these economies at a cheaper price or at a or fund it. Because if the climate goes wrong, then everybody will suffer. And who is responsible for this? Climate change. So these are the major questions that are debated at any climate summit. Another thing is the Shanky diagram. Now, as you can see here, Shanky diagram basically represents, let me give you the definition for it. Yes. They are type of flow diagram in which the width of the arrow is proportional to the flow rate. So if you look at, this is the power plant and this is the energy of the coal, and I put it as 100%, right? So when I put it at 100%, how much of that is actually converted into electricity? Everything else certainly is a loss, because when you burn coal, the whole idea is to get electricity out of it. But even at a power plant, even when we are looking at the power plant level itself, it's only 35% of the energy which is present in the coal is converted into electricity. Everything else is lost. It is lost as heat to the surrounding. 10% of that is used internally within the power plant, and then about 10% of that is lost in the generator. Right, and it came from the Irish gentleman who used such kind of a diagram typically to show the energy efficiency of a steam engine. This is what he was using when he was driving his own ship, as you can see here, right? So he invented it. On his name, we call this as the Sankey diagram, and it follows the law of conservation of energy. So that was about the power plant, where electricity is generated, where we typically work at an efficiency of about 35%. Electric bulb. If you look at the electric bulb, if 100 joules of energy is given to it, it's only 75. When we use a bulb for lighting purpose, the whole idea is to generate as much light as possible. But you could see that in majority of the bulbs, about 75% of the energy which is going in there is converted into light. There's also some heat. When you put your hand with your palm in front of a bulb, you will feel the warmth of it. So about 25% of the energy that has been the electrical energy that it takes in is converted into heat. That was about an electric bulb. And this was about a car. You will hear a lot of people come and talk about car, because cars are important in terms of energy guzzlers. A huge amount of energy goes in transportation. So if you look at the internal combustion engine, the cars that we use, so 100% of the fuel efficiency, that means the fuel that you are burning, combusting in the combustion chamber, about 25% of that is converted into the mobility. We drive a car to move, but it's only 25% that actually convert into mobility, and everything else, as you can see here, is lost. 5% in friction, in coolant, and in exhaust gas. So these are the efficiencies, and it is important to understand that why all the innovations are happening, right? And here, quickly, I won't talk much about it. We all know what happened in COP26, but historically, this has been our emission. 1990, we are starting from 1990, and various pathways are suggested. If we don't do anything, if we keep on moving on this, we call it the business as usual, then we probably end up having a 6-degree rise. And a 6-degree rise toward the end of the century would mean that everything comes to an end. So what is it that we can do about it? The various kinds of policies are put in place, and currently the policies that we are working in, we still will end up about 3 degrees rise. Therefore, in COP21, they pledged, to limit it to within 2 degrees Celsius. Now we are talking about, can we still limit it to 1.5 degree? That means if you're talking about 1.5, this is the kind of reduction in emission has to happen. Now, reduction in emission, I told you about efficiency, will only happen when you have access to those kind of very advanced technology. Morning, we talked about CCUS, that is carbon capture and utilization, carbon capture and storage, carbon capture, utilization, and storage. Various combinations are there, which is for power plant, because power plants, fossil-based power plants, will remain for some time. It's not that tomorrow morning they have all come to an end. Across the globe, the idea is to phase them out slowly. Next 20 years, next 30 years, slowly, we will phase them out, and we will come up with more and more renewable. So based on that, as you can see here, under various scenarios, 1.3, 1.5, 2 degrees, net zero target. This is what is the net zero target. That means in totality, we should be emitting zero to the atmosphere, and various pledges and targets that has been put in place. Now, another thing is energy intensity. In morning, the speakers also talked about energy intensity. Now, what does energy intensity mean? Energy intensity basically means that amount of energy that we have used per unit GDP. So energy intensity, in a way, is a reflection of the efficiency of your system. I said I'm talking about all these terminologies because we will be using them in the coming lectures. So we know what does it mean, because not all the speaker will come back and explain these terms, right? So energy intensity means that when you put in your energy, how much of value it has created. So ideally, lower is the energy intensity, good it is for a country. So if you put 5 joules of energy and you are producing $1 of profit out of it, versus you are putting in only 2 joules of energy and you are still getting $1 of profit, right? That means you should use less and less energy to derive more and more GDP or profit, whichever way you interpret it. So energy intensity means lower the value, good it is for you. Lower the value basically means that your efficiencies of the systems are good. You have access to very high-end technologies, which is very efficient. Energy efficiency basically means you save energy. Now, energy saving is as good as energy creation, right? So a lot of work is now happening across the world to save energy, make your system more and more efficient, right? And here I present to you the data of India from 1990 to 2015, how the energy intensity has gone down. What does it mean? That from 1990, it increased for a bit, as you can see here. It was a constant increasing trend till 1990, 91, 92. And from there, you see there is a dip. Right? And this dip primarily, and you see a different trend here. This is because of the global economic meltdown that happened in 2008. But other than that, there is a constant decrease in the energy intensity, which is good, right? That means that the country as a whole is moving to new advanced technology. More efficient systems are being put in place in factories, in power plants, and all kinds of businesses and services as well, right? And then this is the relation between energy and development. As you can see here, very quickly, I'll tell you, this is the energy consumption per capita, and this is the Human Development Index. There are many parameters that are included in Human Development Index, from access to clean drinking water, health system, energy, cooking fuel, child mortality rate, so on and so forth. So all those indicators are taken into picture. And then we saw how developed a nation is. And we found that there is a very strong relationship between higher development index, that means you are very developed, and your energy consumption. So as you move, as you become more and more and more and more developed, your energy consumption or your energy need also increases. And that's the reason you see at every COP we talk about energy, right? So as you become more developed, your energy need increases. And every country aspire to become more and more developed, which also means that as you become more and more developed, your energy demand also increases. And that's why they work for it. They project that I see a growth rate of 7%, 5%, 2%, whatever it is. That also means that at the same rate, your energy demands would also increase. That means you have to start working on it right now, because any energy project takes minimum of 5 to 6 years time to start its operation. Certainly 3 to 4 years time, right? If you talk about nuclear, 10 years time. It depends. That means you have to plan accordingly. You cannot we cannot start working on it at the 11th hour, that you need it from tomorrow and you start commissioning the plant today. No, you have to start commissioning the plant today for the energy that probably you need next week, something like that. Just a brief summary simile for it, right? So you know what are your growth rate. Accordingly, you have to plan for your energy demand as well. This is very quickly, as you can see here, some of the Human Development Index ranking. As you can see here, I have placed India here. As you can see, Russia is at 52. Primarily, most of them are developing economies. Where we stand in terms of our human development ranking, and of course, with respect to 2018, whether we have moved up or down, something like that. But these are some of the indicators. The reason why I brought in this slide, as you can see here, access to knowledge. How many kids go for how long to schooling, what kind of medical facilities are available, life expectancy at birth, uh, standards of living, so on and so forth. So all these parameters are considered, and then the human HDI comes up with a number, right? So all these factors are in there. Other terminologies that we will be hearing a lot is is the oil equivalent. Now, oil equivalent is something that we use to bring all units together. Somebody is talking in terms of coal, somebody is talking in terms of nuclear, somebody is talking in terms of the country which is more nuclear will be talking more in terms of nuclear energy density, coal, nuclear, solar, and so on and so forth. So to bring everybody together and so that we all can understand, what do? We talk about tons of oil equivalent. Now, what does it mean? It is equivalent to the approximate amount of energy that can be extracted from 1 kilogram of crude oil. So what that means, energy equivalent, whatever energy is present in the fuel that you are using, the same amount of energy if it has to be taken from the crude. Everybody understand what is oil? So in terms of diesel, as you can see here, it is 1.01 tons of oil equivalent. Diesel is a bit more denser energy than crude. It is extracted from it, right? It comes from the refining of it. Basically, what it means is in terms of ton, but when we talk in terms of volumetric of it, it is 0.98 tons of oil equivalent. Petrol, it is 1.05, so on and so forth. As you can see, ethanol, 0.51 tons of oil equivalent. So the amount of energy which is present in ethanol, and we understand it has its heating value or energy is a bit lower, and that can be met if you look at 1 ton, let's compare ton to ton. So 1 ton of ethanol is equal to, in terms of energy which is present in 1 ton of ethanol, is same as the energy which is present in 0.64 tons of oil. Right? So this is what we mean when we talk of oil equivalent, which basically means that if the numbers are more than 1, that means the energy in that particular fuel is more than that of oil. If it is less than 1, that means that oil has more energy than the fuel that we are talking about. Anyway, whichever way you want, you can interpret it. Thermal power plants, as you can see, we normally say 1 megawatt hour, which is 1 unit of electricity, is equal to 0.086 tons of oil equivalent. Okay. And as you can understand, this comes from with an assumption that the power plant is working at 39% of thermal efficiency, which is one of the highest in the world, by the way, right? 39 conventional power plant that I'm talking about, not with all the supercritical and all those stuff, right? And this is quickly in terms of how global energy use is increasing and region-wise how it looks like, which are the very energy thirsty nations. As you can see here, darker the color, more is the the energy usage of that region. Yeah, I've already talked about it. And now in terms of pre-industrialization era, because as I told you, we always talk in terms of pre-industrialization era, and I'll come to it in a moment. I'll show you the graph for it. So industrialization brought in all the changes, right? All the mechanization that we see today, the urban setup that is happening. The urban and rural divide was not there before the Industrial Revolution. And this whole proletarization, this factory-based system, getting salary-based system, the way majority of us draw our salaries, scholarships, monthly remuneration or weekly remuneration, the consumption, the way we consume, it has all started with the Industrial Revolution. And as you can see here, we all know that it was fueled or started at Great Britain because of certain advantages that they have. They have the power of exploration, sea power, they have the political stability, the government support, they colonize, and there was also the growth of private investments. This is important, right? They have wealth at their end to dispose. At the same time, they were also innovating. The reason for Industrial Revolution, all these suppose were there to underpin, but then there were also innovations that were happening. If you look at agriculture was undergoing a major scientific upgradation, right? And because of that, this when we talk about this investment, because agriculture was blooming, because that was the prime source of income at that point of time. The pool of wealth was also getting developed, right? And as you can see here, the transition started from 1760 to between 1840, and new chemical manufacturing, iron producing processes, improved efficiency of water power, increased use of steam, machine tools, and rise of factory system. It all happened during the Industrial Revolution and Agricultural Revolution, because this was equally important. Due to the increase of labor and land productivity, I'll show you the data between the 17th and the 19th century. And population also grew over the time. over that period of time. And the first industry, agriculture was getting benefited. The first industry that came into existence that benefited from the Industrial Revolution was the textile industry. Before that, it was, the cotton was weaved. The weaving of that happened as a cottage industry in households, right? And labor was performed primarily at home. It was the whole family that would come together and work. And that was the culture across the globe. The factory system only came after the Industrial Revolution. And when the Industrial Revolution happened, we made fabric from wool or cotton, supply of fabric increased, slave labor came in America. And I also talked about all the innovations. Look at it, the invention of cotton gin, spinning jerry, flying shuttle. The entire Industrial Revolution was underpinned by the scientific discoveries and inventions. They all happened at the same time, and they were both pushing each other. There was a push and pull impact because of it, right? Because of this, you see, the kind of demands that were also coming, because there was a disposable income at the other end. Cottage industry appeared too small, therefore factory came into existence. And to power those factory, initially it was the water frame or water wheels that came into existence. You use the water power to spin those machines, right? And output increased, you see, 8 times since then. And agriculture, this is just to show you some examples, some initial inventions that happened in agriculture, right? And this gives you an idea of how it changed. If you look at the crop yield, and this is for England, in 20th century, per acre, it was producing only 8.7. But by the end of the 18th century, it was 26. So you can see, started with 8, and it remained like that for many years, for many centuries. In fact, it's only in the 18th century when this is it, when it started, right? You saw the phenomenal growth in the crop yield. That was because of the scientific discoveries. And as I told you, water frame came into existence 1765. It was used. It was developed by Richard Arkwright, who patented the technology in 1769. So you could look at it, the patenting thing was working since then. So 1769, they developed something and they patented it. It belonged to them. Similarly, the textile industry also saw such scientific inventions, right? And that was when the factory system came into existence. There would be a factory, and when the factory system came into existence, the social structure also changed. This gender-defined role also came into existence, that the men would go to the factories, the women will stay back, look after the household, the children would go to school. So all the system to which we are a part of, it all actually came into existence from the Industrial Revolution. Very quickly, there would a lot that would be said about the Industrial Revolution, but I'm just touching on those major milestones. Biggest invention of that kind of an propelled or gave this the jet velocity to Industrial Revolution was the invention of the steam engine, and that was, we all know, it was invented by James Watt, right? And then many such inventions that came into existence. And as you understand this, it was invented primarily to pump out the water from the coal mining industry, because coal was needed at a very fast rate. So as they say that in necessity is invention is the mother of all inventions. So because of this necessity also that was coming in, all these inventions were taking place. Now this particular man, as you see here, Robert Fulton, I must call him, he was an absolutely very genius man, was an American engineer. He is the one who transformed the way we saw transportation, bringing into the steamboat. So steam engine was invented, and he is the one who invented the steamboat. And as you can see here, because of that, the waterways were discovered. Before that, all the travelings were happening on the back of the back of a horse and so on and so forth. But the steamboat came into existence, and that really reduced the time of travel that it used to take. And he is the man who invented many things. He worked with Napoleon Bonaparte as well, and he worked with the British Royal Army as well, developed a submarine for them. So what I'm trying to say here is that energy was being discovered. In new forms of energy was being discovered and used to different applications. peaceful application to military applications as well. James Watt, I don't think I need to tell you, everybody, all of us have studied about his contribution in our schools. So I'll skip this one. And at the same time, when coal was discovered, or coal was mined the way we mine today, using all those modern tools and techniques, oil was also discovered. Oil basically means the crude oil. Though the earliest known oil well was there in China since 347 CE, but the modern form of use where you could see that oil could be used for transportation and other application came into existence only through 1859. And this, as you can see here, this probably is the first site where oil was drilled in US, right? And oil was, when oil came into existence, as crude oil was came into existence, it was primarily to be used as a fuel for lighting at night, as like kerosene. Okay, it was primarily done to find a solution for lighting at night, not the way we see it today. I mean, nobody used crude oil for lighting, but initially it was done for that purpose only. This is how it all started. And I'll just give you one quick fact here, that the kind of havoc oil has brought in is that in 2020, this is what Reuters reports, that about 29 million abundant oil wells are there in the world. 29 million oil wells. That basically means that it's a huge number, and because they are open, they still release a lot of GHG into the climate or atmosphere. So once the oil is extracted, ideally we should close those well. But after their exploration and extraction, those oils are just abundant and they just lie there, and all the trapped fossil fuel inside those oil well, they slowly release to the atmosphere. And look at the numbers, there are about 29 million such abundant oil well. It all started since 1859. And if you look at it, we started from coal, oil, gas, nuclear, and we progressed, right? It was coal. From coal, we moved to oil, oil to gas. We use nuclear also. You heard about nuclear. We will be hearing a lot about nuclear in coming days. The other application is in fuel cell, where we are talking about water, hydrogen economy as well, and a mobile phone. The kind of, now, as you can see here, from industrial revolution to all the fuel-based hydrogen economy, and from here, from mobile phone, when mobile phone came into existence since the early 1990s, there is a kind of a digital revolution that we see. The whole thing have become more and more smart now. In residential sector, many of us are aware of how decisions and control of your house is taken care by digital tools, Alexa and so on and so forth, right? And as you can see here, only by using smart decisions, nothing else. Your house is there, switching off the light when it is not required, dimming the intensity when there is a natural daylight available inside your room, to thermal comfort. That means adjusting the temperature inside your room so that you don't overheat or overcool it. All these decisions are taken care by pre-programmed tools, and these pre-programmed tools are now called as the artificial intelligence. Right? So that has resulted into, there is a new stream that has come up. We know it as the IoT, which is the Internet of Things. Electric mobility, it has resulted into electric mobility. We're talking about electric mobility, big and small data, and AI. Now, about the electric mobility, I must tell you one thing. When you hear about electric mobility and its climate benefit, it is important that what form of electricity we are talking about. Where is it that it is coming from, right? Otherwise, yes, it certainly has a local benefit. The city that you are living in, the neighborhood where you are living in, if everybody switches from a fossil run car to an electric run car or a battery driven car, that basically means that you are not doing the emission on source. You are not doing the emission, you are not releasing the CO2 that happens because of the combustion of the petrol or diesel or gas in your city. But then to charge the electric vehicle or to charge the battery, the electricity that is produced, where does it come from? It is that you are living in A city and electricity is produced in B city, in city B. So yes, when you are using an electric vehicle, you are keeping the city A clean, but at the cost of making city B polluted. And if city A and city B are both within the boundary of your own country, you, in totality, I don't know how much of saving you are doing. But whatever it is, I'm leaving you with this question: that does it really work? There's an entire day dedicated to e-mobility, the electric vehicles there, and they will come and talk about it. That yes, whether we end up saving or do we end up emitting more? But please remember this: that yes, e-mobility, electric mobility certainly saves a local emission, but total emission, there has to be some total emission, right? And small and big data, it's coming up in a big way. All the data that we need is available, and AI, wherein you leave, driverless cars are also coming up now. So they are pre-programmed tools, pre-programmed engines, those which work. And energy plays a very important role. How are they fueled? Where does it come from? The role of invention in it is equally important. So IEA, which is the International Energy Association, very reputed organization that talks about energy. They have, it won't be wrong if I say that they are an authority in energy, has come up with an entire report which talks about digitalization and energy, which is a new era of energy, because the time that we are living in is the era of digital revolution. All sorts of information is available at in our phones, right? And from your banking to your health to your alert in terms of weather, in terms of you're running out of gas, to you are due for a check of your car or things like that, is available with you. And all these things is fueled because of energy. Now today we are connected today with each other during this pandemic time is possible only because of the digital revolution and the tools. Morning we use Google as a tool, right now we are using Zoom as a tool. So all these digital tools are available with us, and there is a benefit. Say the morning we had a problem with the recording part of it, right? Because Google doesn't give you the option of recording, so we moved to Zoom because Zoom gives you that option. So yeah, so these are the value addition, these are the innovations that are happening in that era, in this sector as well, right? And it is making our life easier, let me say it this way. Look at the digitalization for flexible and resilient electric system. Now that we are talking about more and more integrating more and more renewable into our existing grid system, how will it happen? Who will take the decision? Where to generate? When to shut down? All of us, all the country goes through a peak time. That means there is a time in the day where your demands are higher. Let's say if you're living in a country which is primarily hot climate. So there, if you want to ensure a thermal comfort, then we normally see that in country like India, in summer season, we have a peak demand at about between 2 to 3 in the afternoon, 2 p.m. to 3 p.m. Now, how do we meet that? That extra demand that is there for those 1 or 2 hours, right? That means that we have to run some extra power plant or some extra reactor. We don't run it throughout the day. We run it only at that time when there is a peak demand. Who will take the decision when to start? Who judge the forecasting? Who predict it? So all those things require energy. All those things require smartness of the gadget, making it more and more digital. So that's how digitalization is very important. And digitalization, one of the biggest benefit of digitalization is energy saving and energy efficiency. But when you program something, when you have the data with you and you program it efficiently, you actually end up saving a huge amount of energy. Look at it, as I told you, only by making your bulbs in your house, if you make it smart enough to take a decision like when to increase its intensity, when to decrease its intensity, when to switch on and when to switch off, only doing by this, just a single bulb can save not a single bulb, all the light bulbs that are there in your house can save 10% of your electricity. It's huge. Now multiply it with the number of households that you have in your country. So 10% reduction in your domestic sector means a lot. So countries are coming up with multiple policies. One policy that Government of India came up was the Ujala policy, wherein the idea was to convert or to get rid of all the incandescent bulbs, the yellow bulbs, and they were all replaced with LED bulbs. We all know that the incandescent bulb have a typical wattage of about 60 watts. Vis-a-vis the same amount of brightness or light as we report it in lumen can be got from a 10 or 5 or 6 watt LED bulb. So 60 versus 6 or 60 versus 10 or 12. So you can see the reduction. So this is the reduction in just one bulb. Now replace it with all the bulbs in the country. There's a small number, but if you add up to huge number, this result into huge savings. So these are the kind of benefits of digitalization in energy sector that are happening across the globe, right? Grids are becoming more and more smart. When we are talking about integrating, till now the grids were primarily fed by coal or gas, depending upon which part of the world we are living in. I mean, if you go to US, it is more with gas fed, right? And if we talk about India and this part of the country, nation country, majority of us are coal fed, right? So, but they have the storage facility. I mean, they have the energy storage with them. The capacity utilization for fossil-based power plants are higher because they are not vulnerable to change in weather. Now, when you talk about solar, now today is a sunny day and you may have plenty of sun available to generate electricity. But what if tomorrow is cloudy? There is very little sun available to you. How would you, but the demands are same. How do you ensure that your demands are met? You don't run into a moment of crisis. So we talk about forecasting. We collect the weather data for a huge amount of time. We process it, and then we do the probability analysis, and we come up with the numbers that whether it is safe to rely on solar tomorrow or not, so on and so forth, right? So we are making the entire system digital. Our appliances are becoming more and more smart. I mean, many of you probably are wearing the smart watch that tracks all your activity, that gives you alert about the next meeting, maybe for the meeting that was scheduled today, that tracks your health as well, right? Tells you about many things. And electric vehicle, as you talked about, it has come up in a big way. It's a phenomenal change that we will be seeing we are witnessing it. All the country will be seeing it very soon. India has a massive plan for phasing out the fossil-based vehicles. We have a plan that by 2030 and maybe by 2050, all of our mobility would be electric-based mobility. Domestic sector, the plan is that by 2030, about 80% of the mobility will shift to e-mobility. Domestic sector, that means household movement will happen from with electric car, right? And I think I would just end my talk today with a video from the again International Energy Association, what they have done for what they have to say in terms of digital revolution. So just hold on for a second. Is it visible? Right? Okay. So just hold on for a second. So, इसको ये नहीं ये वीडियो वाला नीचे नीचे कौन सा ये yes Is it visible to you? ऑडियो आ रहा है? मेरे को नहीं आ रहा है. नहीं आ रहा है ना? Okay, just hold on. Let me share again to you. Stop sharing. Okay. Let me share again. ऑडियो के साथ कैसे शेयर होगा? Just hold on for a second. Let me share it with you. हाँ, share sound भी है. But where is the video gone now? हाँ, मैं कर रही हूँ. Just a second. ये है ना? Share. अब देख. Right. So with this, I come to an end of the talk today about energy from industrial revolution to digital revolution. If you have anything to add or something to discuss, by all means, please speak. I'm here. I will be here for next 15-20 minutes. After this session, there is a break for about half an hour, and we will resume again at 3:30. So, I mean, the session practically, this session practically is over. If you have any query, if you have something to speak, you can do so, or else we will start in another 40 minutes, in about 30 minutes time.
May I go through?
Thank you, everyone. Yes, please.
Very lovely presentation and very insightful. By the way, my name is Imam
Thank you.
from Zambia. In energy policy and planning. It's so insightful that I think at some point I lost track. But just backtracking a little bit, the energy sources that you depicted for developing countries, coal power plants, and that relating with efficiency levels. Have you done any comparison in the amount of coal usage by the developing countries over the past and projecting to the future? Because there's been a lot of talk about decrease. So in that comparison, could it really show that there's been a decrease and there will be a decrease? Likewise, developing countries, use of coal, has it been increasing or constant or decreasing? If you had any such relation. Oh, thank you.
Right. Thank you. So yes, today was, as I told you, just to set the stage. We will be talking about all that. I will be presenting it myself. The case of a power plant, right? And how the emissions from various countries, how they have moved from coal to renewable based system. Now, if I talk about India itself, up until 2007 or 8, about 12 years back, all our grid, almost all our grid, about 78%, 80% of our grid, the national grid, was thermal driven. That means coal driven, primarily coal driven. From there, from 70% coal and almost zero renewable, today we are about 25% renewable. Right? But there are multiple things that we need to be taken care of. One is that almost zero renewable 12 years back to 25% renewable today in terms of percentage, but our demands have also gone up. So let's say in 2007, if we were 200 gigawatts in the country, today we are 330 gigawatts. The country today is 330 gigawatt. And I know the case of India a bit more, that's what I'm talking about India, but I'll be presenting the global case as well. The numbers are not there in front of me right now, but I will be presenting it to you. So from 2007, when we were like 200 odd gigawatt, today we are 330 gigawatts. And in 330 gigawatt, 25% is renewable. But that doesn't mean that there is no coal addition. We are adding coal to our portfolio as well, but at a slower pace. The pace at which we are adding solar or other renewable is much higher. That is one. And every country is doing it. Majority of the countries are doing it. They are going big terms in nuclear as well, because nuclear is also considered clean. And in terms of coal, now let's look at coal itself. The technology has really matured. Now, not majority, but many of the power plant in India were not supercritical in nature. So that gives a higher efficiencies. When you use supercritical technologies, your efficiencies are higher. That means you generate more amount of electricity from the same amount of coal. We talked about the access to those technologies, right? And off late, over the last 10 years, all the power plant, fossil or coal-based power plant, we have the world fifth, we are in fact the world third or fourth largest reserve of coal. So coal will remain certainly for next 100 years in the country. The only thing is whether renewables will be there or not. Certainly renewables will be there because our capacities are also increasing. We started for 200 odd gigawatt hour grid. I'm talking about grid only. So 330 gigawatts today. And by 2050, we will be 1250 gigawatt, like 4 times what we are today. Right? So in that 4 times, like 1200 gigawatt in 2050, if we are looking at, then the percentage of coal would be low. Let's say if we're talking about 50% coal. So in 2007, we were 70% coal, 78% coal. 2050, we will be, let's say even if I'm saying 25% coal, but even 25% coal of 1200 gigawatt means about 300, the entire capacity that we have today is of coal. So there will be addition, there will be coal addition, but it's just at the pace at which we will be adding our other portfolio like nuclear or solar or other renewables would be at a much higher pace. We have taken solar energy in an absolute mission mode at a very fast pace for solar diffusion. Coal, we are trying to make it clean. Coal is not going away anywhere in the entire world. It won't go. It will phase out. It will phase out slowly. But it's not that tomorrow it will all stop. It's not going to happen. Nowhere. No country is going to do that because all of us are very much dependent on those who have developed their infrastructure on coal or gas will rely on that. But the idea is to phase it out. And while you are phasing it out, the idea is also to make it more and more clean. Supercritical technology is one such way. Supercritical doesn't make it clean. Supercritical only increases your number of units. So what happened if you look at the emission intensity of the electricity that you are producing. Now, today, if the power plant is producing 10 units of electricity and it is generating, let's say, 100 grams of CO2, it is emitting 100 grams of CO2 into the atmosphere. Now, if I use an advanced technology, and because of which, instead of producing 10 units of electricity, it now starts producing 15 units of electricity. However, it is still releasing only 100 grams of carbon dioxide, right? So what I have done, per unit electricity, my carbon intensity has gone down. Earlier, 100 grams was released for 10 units of electricity. Now 100 grams of GHG is released for 15 units of electricity. That means per unit electricity, my emission has gone down. It's plain mathematics. But to do that, to increase your efficiencies from 10 units to 15 units, you need those very advanced technologies. Supercritical technology is one such thing, which is a norm now. Every country is now using supercritical technologies in their power plant. The other technology that is is there at the horizon, and many countries are practicing it, is the carbon capture. That means from the stack of the power plant, you capture the CO2, and therefore your emissions are low. Now, whether these CCUS technologies that they are using, is it really clean? Is it really green? That is the question. Similarly, when we talk about hydrogen economy, is the hydrogen that we are talking about, where is it coming from? Now, there's a huge amount of talk about hydrogen, but where is this hydrogen coming from? Now, if this hydrogen is coming from a fossil source, methane, CH4, then you cannot say this hydrogen is a green hydrogen. This is still a fossil-based hydrogen. It's just that I have broken the molecule of methane into carbon and hydrogen. And now I'm using hydrogen. Hydrogen has its own benefit, as the way I talked about the electric vehicle, that at the point source, the emission is not carbon. I mean, water also has a GHG potential, but lower than that of CO2. So these are all numbers that we will be talking about it. And all the numbers in terms of how many countries have moved down, where they stand, I'll show it to you in the coming classes for sure. Any other query?
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you. Right, so I think let's take a break for about half an hour, and we will come back 3:30 India time, half an hour from now, and we will start the next talk. So take a break and relax, everybody. See you.